Alright guys, this is it. The first official video for the R.L. Stine Revisited series. Now, before I get down to brass tacks, this is basically a revisited series, or a review series of the mainly Goosebumps books. And maybe some of R.L. Stine's other works as well. But mainly this is going to be about revisiting the Goosebumps series and see if they hold up and if they're as good as they were when I read them when I was in elementary school / middle school. And to start things off, I suppose we should get started at the very beginning. With a little history of my introduction to Goosebumps. I can't remember him all that well anymore, but I'm pretty sure I was introduced to the book series by the TV show. I remember watching the TV show growing up, and I had I had VHS copies of One Day at Horrorland and Stay Out of the Basement and Night in Terror Tower. And I think my most rewatched was Bride of the Living Dummy and An Old Story. We'll get to those when we get to them. But just go back to the beginning. We're going to be reviewing the very first Goosebumps book called Welcome to Dead House. And I'm going to be comparing the book and speaking a little bit on the adaptation done by the Goosebumps TV show. And see if it did it justice or not, because if you read a lot of the Goosebumps books and then watch the television adaptation, they're pretty rocky. I'm going to be honest. They're fine on their own, but when you compare it to the books, they're pretty hit and miss. So yeah. Enough chat, freaking stalling. Let's just get this thing going. So, what's this book about? If you guys didn't grow up reading these, or if you're just getting into them recently or something. Well, this book is about Amanda and Josh Benson, who their family wins a free house. Well, they didn't win it in a contest. Their late great uncle apparently gave the house to them as what was it? He gave it to them as he basically loaned it to them. Let's just say that he loaned them a house. I mean, he passed away and he gave it to them. And they didn't even know they had a great... they didn't even know they had a great uncle. The family didn't know they had a great uncle Charles. And when they get to this house, it's very spooky. It's a very spooky house. Let's just read the back to you. It literally says, Amanda and Josh think the old house they've just moved into is weird, spooky, possibly haunted, and the town of Dark Falls is pretty strange too. But their parents don't believe them. You'll get used to it, they say. Go out and make some new friends. So Amanda and Josh do. But these new friends aren't exactly what their parents had in mind. Because they want to be friends. forever. And, I'm trying to wrap my mind about, like, what kind of review do I want this to be. Because I just read this book again. Like, I read this book, I think, I read this book, like, twice in the last, like, few weeks, or, like, month or so. I read it twice. I listened to an audiobook twice. And, you know, we mostly associate the Goosebumps books with just being silly. But this book is probably one of the, I don't want to say forgotten ones, because it's not really forgotten, but it's definitely one of the, people don't talk about this one as much. And it's actually one of the scarier Goosebumps books, to be honest. It's really scary. I think this is just because this is R.L. Stine's, like, he was writing, the Teen Fear Street series at the same time, he wrote that first book, and then he started, like, writing this, and I guess, like, that same horror juice was flowing through him, and it started to work its way through his kids, because this book is, like, this book scared me, basically. It didn't terrify me, but this book has some, like, really, like, I don't want to say intense scenes. There's no intense scenes in this book, but it's not boring either. It's really, when you really just sit down, and you have to be in, like, a certain lit room, and you have to let your mind go into this book, and you have to put yourself in these characters. And if you let it, it really is effective, because there are a lot of scenes about just descriptions of this house, and how it's always dark. Literally, this house is nothing but shadows, long shadows. And Stine describes it as, like, Amanda, she literally hears, like, footsteps and whispers in her room at night when there's nobody else in the house. I mean, just imagine that. It really gets to you. Like, if you let it, just see yourself in this dark, dark house. And that's another thing I didn't notice. I think this is nothing, like, this is really nothing that noteworthy. But no, never mind. No, I'm not gonna say that. It's really nothing. It doesn't play into, like, it doesn't play into, like, who these characters are at all. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. I never noticed this before, mainly due to the fault of the episode casting, like, white actors as the main characters, as, like, the Benson family, but I'm just gonna say it. I think Amanda and her family might be a family of color, because it says somewhere that Amanda is described as having dark skin and curly hair. And that could be any kind of, like, lightness. It could be, like, really tan to just, like, full brown. But I never really noticed that before, because, again, like, the portrayal of the characters in the episode, casting, like, mainly white actors. And I never picked up on that before. It doesn't give any doesn't really give you any descriptions other than that. They just say she's like this tall. She's a tall girl that has curly hair, a serious face, and like just dark skin, and she's skinny. So I know I'm not giving a lot of detail, but the way this book is written is so creepy. And there's a particular scene in the story that will like probably freak people out. It didn't scare me, but there's a scene when Amanda is sleeping and she has a nightmare. And she's sitting at a table having dinner with her family, and her family and herself are all basically like corpses or skeletons. And they're eating like bones off of their dinner plate. And I guess that could be scary depending on the person. I mean, it didn't scare me. I mean, because they're just skeletons, but like the way they're described, like how like their eyes sag, and like how flesh is clinging to their faces, like that's pretty gruesome. Other than that, it's pretty just the way this book is written. Like a lot of these books are written pretty, not really pretty simplistically. There's not a lot in the writing to it. It's written for children. But I think it's really cool what Stine did, and just like how he wrote it, just how effective and creepy he wrote it. And yeah, just like the description it's just it's not like they move into a castle or anything like that. It's a normal house. You can see it. But it's a very spooky looking house. I love these 90s covers. I love the 90s covers. I'm not a fan of what the reprints or like the new old classic Goosebumps look like, the one with like the new designs on them. To me, those look kind of silly, but these ones, I love these covers. And yeah, it's just all about Amanda and Josh. The story is just about Amanda and Josh adjusting to their house, and just their life. It's pretty short. It's a short story. I mean, it's a short book. It's just about them adjusting to this town. There's not like a lot. It's mainly just there's only like a few areas described in the story. But when I go through them all, like all the Goosebumps books, this probably will end up being one of my favorites. Maybe like in the top 20. I just love this. Again, it's so simplistic, but it's so effective. It's just it's just written so atmospherically. And yeah, I would highly, if you haven't already, I would highly recommend reading this one. It won't take a lot of your time. You might even kind of it might even kind of creep you out if you let it. Don't go into it looking to critique the hell out of it. Just go into it just looking for a spooky story to read. If I were to give it like a rating, I would probably give it 4 out of 5 screams. Yeah, that's my rating. 4 out of 5 screams for Welcome to Dead House. And now the salty part of the episode. Let's talk about that television adaptation of the Goosebumps show. Now, before doing this video, I just rewatched the episode again just to give it like a clear opinion. And honestly, they pretty much botched a lot of the episode. They pretty much botched a lot of the episode in the story. They botched a lot of the story in this episode. Oh man. I'm just gonna go through like the list because I don't want this video to be like too long. It's already 16 minutes long. And this show's rambling. Okay, the house in the story doesn't feel at all like it does in the book. I mean, they got the basics down. It is a large looming shadowy house. And I think it's mainly like you can't really capture what a reader sees in their head as opposed to what like a director sees in like through a screen. You know? When I was watching this episode, I didn't feel the house was nearly as atmospheric. And even in the book, if you like, depending on who reads it, people would say it doesn't feel very atmospheric. I certainly think it's atmospheric. And it's like, and some of the stuff that they do in the episode, like they move certain scenes around. Like there's a scene where there's a scene where Amanda she looks up, and this is in the episode, but it plays differently. She looks up in the window, and she sees that there's someone in the room. There's someone in the window. And book versus episode. In the book, this happens after in the beginning, like this is after they already went to the house. After they I might think they got settled, I'm not sure. But in the book, it's right when they arrive that she looks up and she sees someone in the house. And in the book, it's this kid named Ray Thurston. But if you watch the episode and you pay really close attention, the person standing in the window looking down at her is clearly not a teenage boy. I could have sworn it was Mr. Dawes, Compton Dawes, the real estate agent who shows him around the house in the neighborhood. And it's so much creepier in the book. I think it was right around the time, it was after the time, when it was right when their brother Josh, he goes after Petey, and then her and her family and Mr. Dawes, have to go and find him, and they find him, and then they come back, and then she looks up and she sees, there's someone standing in the window looking down at her. And the boy, in the window, she sees the boy when she's moved, it was already in the episode when they already moved in, and she's getting ready for bed, and the boy walks across her doorway. But in the book, it's right before they move in, they're just touring the house, and she's checking out, she's like walking around her like unfurnished bedroom, and she sees the figure of a boy who's not her brother like walk past the door, and they haven't moved in by this point. And that scene is just so freaking creepy. It's better than what they did in the episode. And then, oh my gosh. I'm gonna try to do it. Like, I'm trying not to get mad because I know it's a different, like, I know it's a TV show and this is a book. It's different mediums, but, and I understand, like, they can't do things, I can't understand they can't do certain things because of budget, but just, like, little things that didn't need to be changed. For example, like, in the book, their dog Petey is a white terrier. In the episode, their dog is a collie. Why did they need to change that? There was literally no reason to make it a different breed. And their mom and dad were more, their mom and dad were a little more calm and cool in the episode. And then they were more, like, a lot more stressed out in the book. Like, they did argue a lot more in the book. And yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why they changed certain things. I can understand, like, big changes have to be changed, but, like, small stuff, I don't know. And then, for the most part, like, it feels like they got a lot of the story done correct, but the ending was kind of a letdown. The ending in the book, I think, is really good. And really, really kind of grotesque, even for a kid's book. The ending for the episode, in my opinion, felt way too silly. If you don't care about spoilers, or if you, like, actually want to read this book and then check out the episode and come back, it's perfectly fine. But I'm going to talk spoilers in this video, and probably for the remainder of this whole revisited series, because I want to. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you leave now. Okay. So, in the book, and they keep it mostly the same in the book and episode. Petey runs away in the book and episode. And then Josh and Amanda have to go and chase him and find him. And they come to both book and episode, they come to the same place. Josh presumes, and he's actually correct, that in the beginning of the book, Petey runs to the Dark Falls Cemetery. And in the episode, they actually, like, follow him into the Dark Falls Cemetery. But the thing is, the way they changed it, it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot more creepy in the book. The way they find out, spoiler, and this is the plot, this is the whole twist of the book. The way they find out that the whole town of Dark Falls is actually dead, in my opinion, is way better done in the book than it was in the TV episode. In the book, and this is after like they meet like their group of friends, who they can't be out in the sunlight. That's both in the book and the episode. The dead can't be in the sunlight. And in the book, they when they're going to look for Petey in the graveyard, they bump into one of the kids, Ray Thurston, and he keeps telling him that they can't go into the cemetery. He keeps telling them they can't go, and he's trying to get them away from the cemetery. And the way they find out is they see the kids' tombstones. Like all the kids that they hung out with and played baseball with at their playground, they find their tombstones. That's how they find out they're all dead. Everyone is dead in this town. And the Ray tries to stop them. And the way they stop him and kill him is, I don't know why they put quotes there, they kill him, is they shine a flashlight on his face, and then Stine describes it as his face like starts decomposing and is like, it starts to fall off, and his skull starts to show and his eyeballs roll in the back of his head and he falls apart until he's nothing but like bones and like clothes. And I guess for a kid, it's really, like, if you're a really parent reading this, might sound gruesome. I thought it was really cool. And so, in the episode, the way they find out the whole town is dead is they literally see them. They're having the town is having, like, a meeting in the middle of the cemetery. This is in the book, too, but it's different. They find out they're all zombies. And the makeup for the most part in the episode, it's okay, I guess. It looks pretty competent. It looks pretty standard for a zombie story. Like they're all just like gray and like they have like these dark rings around their eyes. Pretty standard zombie looking makeup. I guess I can't expect too much with this show's budget. But the way it unfolds at the end, like compared to the book, the episode's ending is a little bit more silly than I think the book's ending was. Like the ending to the book was actually pretty dark. And there's like this whole thing about they added a new thing where they Mrs. Benson, she brought a wreath to the house that was passed down in her family, and she hangs it up above the fireplace. That wasn't in the book. There was no wreath, and there's supposedly this wreath was, I guess, a protection against the dead. But in the episode, like the dead folk, they convince him to burn it because they think it's bad luck. They think it's what started this whole, what started all the bad luck in the town and the house. Of course, they're lying to them because they want to. I guess it's pretty unclear on what they actually want to do with them. I mean, they're zombies. You would think like they want to eat them, but they don't. They talk like normal humans do. They're dead, but they talk. I mean, the ones in the book. I mean, the dead in the book, like they talk too. But they said they want to. They said they will need their blood. I'm not really sure what that means. The zombies need their blood. Zombies don't just take blood. They take everything they can. They're scavengers, basically. They're corpses. And I don't I don't think he's really explained it in the book either. They just said they need blood. And that's why, like, both in the book and episode, they always invite, like, they always, like, every single year, a new family is always invited to the dead house. And then, I guess, whatever they do to them, they become the dead themselves. And, yeah, just, I guess it's pretty spooky. Again, it's the way that Stine describes it and writes it. It makes it that more spooky and creepy. And then the ending, the very ending of the show and the episode and the book is also very different. In the end, they find out that Compton Dawes, the realtor, the one who showed them the house, they find out he's dead too, of course. And then he becomes really, like, quite intense for a minute. And then they have this little scuffle in the cemetery. And then they find their parents I don't know, I forgot what it was described as. It's described as like an amphitheater, basically. There's a small amphitheater in the middle of the cemetery. And above the cemetery, there's a tree that's basically like uplifted out of the ground. And the way they defeat the dead is they push the tree out of its rooted place. They get a running start and they push out of its rooted place. And then the tree falls over and, like, sunlight, which is the sunlight is exposed to all the zombies. Or the dead. I don't like calling them zombies in the book, because they're not really zombies. They're just dead. And, yeah, the sunlight basically just, like, melts them all. And there's, like, a moment when, Amanda's friend, Karen Thurston. Now, I think her name it's not Thurston, forgive me, it's something else. I don't know. Let's just call her Karen. It's Karen. Her friend Karen, like the girl that wanted to be your friend Karen. She's described as, like, like Rick Ray, her face is like falling off and stuff, and her eyeballs like fall out of her head. But she looks up and she sees Amanda, I guess, looking at her, and she says, "Thank you." Like she was glad to end her suffering. And then the climax of the episode is the zombies break into the dead house, and then they chase the family up the stairs to the attic. Excuse me. And before I guess whatever they're gonna do, feast on them or something. They pull the boards off the windows because everyone's house in Dark Falls has, like, boarded up windows and doors because they can't let the sunlight in because it'll kill them. So they tear the boards off the windows and let the light spill in. And that's what kills them, basically. It's the same idea, kind of. It's like the sunlight kills them. It's just the way that it's done in the book versus the episode. The episode's end, I get because of budgetary reasons, they couldn't, like, build a giant tree to push over and, like, this whole graveyard scene. I think because of budget they couldn't do that. But the episode ending was kind of anticlimactic. Again, just as an episode, it was okay. It was decent. And very end episode, like at the end of the book, which is one of my favorite parts of the book. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the book. Actually, is the ending. After Amanda and Josh save their parents, they waste no time like packing up and getting the hell out of there. It's almost kind of funny. And then in the book, like in the episode, like they mentioned that they couldn't sell their house in the book, or they were waiting to sell their house. But in the episode, they actually did sell their house. So I don't know where they're probably going to have to find a new place to live in the episode. But in the book, they go back to their old neighborhood. But one of my favorite moments in the book, like I said, one of my favorite moments in the book is the ending. Just as they're leaving Dark Falls, like they're literally just going down the street. Amanda suddenly shouts stop and like runs out of the car because she wants to take one last look at the old house. She just stands there and looks at it, and it says, and Stine says that she's kind of like looking at it hypnotically in a way, and it says that she looks over and she sees like a new family like pulling up into the driveway. And when the kids see her, family sees her, they ask her who she is and what does she like want. And she responds with, "I used to live in your house," which is what some of the dead kids said to her throughout the story. I used to live in their house, because they did. Every single kid that died in Dark Falls, at least I'm assuming, like, every single one of them lived in Amanda and Josh's house before they died. So that's why it's called the Dead House. And she says that she doesn't like, before she turns around to run back to her car, she doesn't know it, but she thinks it. She thinks she sees Mr. Dawes, who was actually killed, and like he was killed in like, I guess the burning of the dead when they pushed the tree over. She thinks she sees him again, standing on the porch with a clipboard in hand, waiting to like welcome this new family into the dead house. But then she doesn't address it. She just runs, and she runs back to the car, and they drive off, and that's it. That's the end of the book. Might not sound like much, but I thought it was pretty eerie. The fact that she was just standing there looking up at this house. Like, she'll never forget the feeling she had of it. And then the whole thing about this new family moving in, and Mr. Dawes greeting them. That's just so creepy to me. And of course, like, both in the book and episode, they do kill off Petey. But in the book, the episode ends a little differently, of course. In the book, when they're driving, it actually shows them driving out of town, and then they spot Petey. But in the book, they already know that Petey is dead. They always say the dogs have to go first, because the dogs always know. In the book, though, when they're driving down the road, they see Petey and they, like, pick him up. But then they find out he's one of them, the dead, because he turns gray. And he smells bad. Which is something they already did earlier in the book. Like, they tell him that Petey's dead, and when they find him for the first time in the graveyard, they pick him up and they drop him because he smells. Like, he smells rotten. Like a corpse. Like he's dead. Yeah, so I think I said everything I wanted to. I mean, they both had the same they both had the same reason in the book and episode. Why this town was dead is because of a incident at the chemical factory, and it killed them all. That's why the whole town is dead. So, I think I covered everything I wanted to for this book. I think it's a really solid first book. It's definitely, like I said, I have a long way to go with these reviews to see which one is the definitive scary one. But this one, I think, even though it is the first one, it kind of flies under the radar a little for a lot of people. It's kind of underrated. And I think people should, especially Goosebumps fans or fans who are just kind of revisiting this series like I am. I think they should give this book a retry or a revisit, because it is so creepily written. And it's not just like the dead, it's just the whole atmospheric writing of it. And it's it's very simplistic, but it's just the eeriness of it. And that's the best way I can describe it. So like I said, I would give this 4 out of 5 screams. The episode, I would give it on its own, I think I would give it a C plus. Yeah. On its own, it's pretty decent, but it's not as good as the book, in my opinion. It's really not. But, yeah, that's just what I think. So, that's about it. About to wrap this up on this whole revisited series. Number 1 in the bag, and God, I think there's 62 more books to go, and I'm going to start on the other series. But I absolutely recommend this book. And honestly, I know it seems highly unlikely, but I would love a sequel to this book. Even if it's not as good as this one, I would just love to see a return to Dead House with a new family. That's just my opinion. So, thank you, guys, for watching this. And I will see you on the next I'll see you on the next Stine Revisited review.